ultimately, again, of something that is tar, quote unquote, swallowed up, in this case, by the earthenware vessel, the closed earthenware vessel will prevent, ultimately, again, the tahor item from contracting any type of tumah. So the Gemara says, if that works by an earthenware vessel, so Adam, Adam, shamatzil al tumah shebesocho milatame, a person, Rabbosai, who ultimately, again, prevents tumah, which is inside of him, from conveying tumah to other things. Eino din shematzil al tara shebesocho milatame. All the more so, Rabbosai, he will prevent something that is tar inside of him from becoming tamei. So we'll say here, it's an interesting kavachomer. So also, the Gemara saying over here is like this: an earthenware vessel, where if you have something swallowed up, so to speak, closed up, an earthenware vessel, where if you have a piece of tumah inside of it, even if the earthenware vessel is closed, that's being swallowed up by the earthenware vessel does not prevent the tumah from extending outwards. Yet, that same earthenware vessel, if you put something tahor inside of it, close up the vessel. Even if you expose the earthenware vessel to tumah, the closing of the closed earthenware vessel prevents the tahor item inside of it from becoming tamei. Certainly a person, Rabbosai, a human being, where we just established that what? That if a human being swallows something that is tamei, so what happens? The fact that it's swallowed up inside of him, that tamei item cannot convey tumah to other things. All the more so, if there is something tahor inside of him, he prevents that tahor item from contracting tumah. An interesting kavachomer. To which the Gemara says, well, maybe the kavachomer is a bit flawed. Why? Malik licheres shekain in mitame migabo. I will say, here's the difference. A kli cheres, you will say, why is it, by the way, let's take a step back. If you have a kli cheres, and you have a tahor item inside of that kli cheres, and you close the lid and you wrap it up, and then what happens? You take a piece of corpse, right, and you go ahead and you mamish, stick it to the side of the kli cheres. So we'll say, what's talacha? The contents inside the kli cheres remain tahor. And we'll say, now why is that? That's a technicality, because kli cheres only becomes tamei, I will say, where? On the inside. Right? Ultimately, again, on the inside. Kli cheres does not become tamei from the outside, which I will say is a dramatic halacha by kli cheres. So the Gemara says, you want to make a kal v'chomer from kli cheres to people, but they're not really analogous. Why not? Because malak kli cheres shem tamei gabo. We'll say kli cheres can't become tamei from the outside, it only becomes tamei from the inside. Masha'enkin, people can become tamei from the outside. Tomar ba'adam shemetame migabo. I will say a person can become tamei from the outside. To which the Gemara says, but again, atu anon migabo kaminon mitocho kaminon. But says Gemara, I understand that, but remember our whole conversation, I will say, is about what? It's not about tumantara on the outside. The whole conversation is about tumantara on the inside. Remember again, we're talking about tuma bilua. Tara bilua. We're talking about things that are swallowed and absorbed. So yes, it is an analogous conversation, because what we're talking about are the internal part of a person, or in this case of a kli cheres, to either be able to transmit tumah or to shield from tumah. To which the Gemara says, Adrabah, kli cheres chamar. We'll say, I could say that a kli cheres is even more chamar than a person. How so? Shekein mitame me'aviro. This is actually quite interesting. A kli cheres actually has the ability to be metame from its airspace. As Rabbi say, is actually quite interesting. If you take something that is tame, ultimately again, and you dangle it in the airspace of the kli cheres, even though what? There is absolutely no contact with the kli cheres becomes tame. Rabbi say, this is different than people. If let's say you were to take a piece of nevela and you were to dangle it in your mouth, right, without it touching any part of your mouth. So we'll say, so you're not tamei, right? It's weird, but right? But I'm saying, but you're not tamei. You haven't ingested anything treif. There's nothing with that. To which the Gemara says ultimately, because right, people by human beings you need mago. You need some type of you need some type of contact. So I'll say, so therefore the Gemara says over here, in fact, the kli cheres is more chamor ultimately again than a person. So again, ultimately, the Gemara says, here's the limud. So we'll say, so from here, now, we've ultimately understood that halacha lamaisa, whether you, so now we've established these two facts. That number one, tumah, which is absorbed inside of a person, does not convey tumah to others, right? And in certain respects, as we see from the Mishnah, even to the person himself, right? Even to the person himself. So remember again, I eat the nevela right before sunset. I run to the mikvah, sun goes down, I'm tar. Even though effectively what? There is nevela sitting in my stomach. Right? Halacha lemaisa, if something is tahar, and ultimately, again, quote unquote, swallowed or absorbed. So again, even if the utensil or the person becomes tameh, that tumah is not transmitted to the absorbed item inside the kli or inside the person. And I will say, now the Gemara raises an interesting point. Ashkechan balua de lamala. So we'll say, I understand these halachos as something that is swallowed above. And I will say swallowed above ultimately again means swallowed by mouth. Balua dilamata minalan. I will say what happens if something is swallowed from below. Right? So we'll say, so through the rectum. What happens again if something is swallowed from below? If something is inserted in the body from below, we'll say, what's the status of that item vis-a-vis tumah? So kavachomer, the Gemara says, kavachomer, umar lemala she'ina ose equal matzil. And we'll say, when ingested by mouth, where digestion does not occur. Ultimately, again, we're going to see what that statement means. Yet, again, halacha l'maisa is considered to be absorbed by the body, and therefore, again, does not transmit or receive tumah. Lemata sha'osi ikol eno din shematzil. All the more so, if something is ingested from the bottom part of the body, where digestion does occur, ultimately, again, certainly is considered to be absorbed, and therefore halacha l'maisa does not go ahead and transmit or receive tumah. To which the Gemara says, what are you talking about? Klum ose ika lamata ela al yidei mala. Says the Gemara, but 1 second, it's true that the majority of digestion occurs what we'll call in the lower part of the body, but the digestion process cannot get started without what? Without being ingested normally. To which the Gemara says, Ella al yidei maila afilu, I'm sorry, Ella klumos ikal lamata ella de maila, Ella al yidei maila afilu hachi equal de lamata rav. We'll say, nevertheless, again, what the Gemara is saying over here is that the primary digestion occurs from the bottom of the body, and therefore, again, the Gemara, since you're saying Rabosai, that these halachos are the same, whichever way these items are being ingested in the body, whether they're being ingested from above or from below, halach l'maisi, these same halachos, i.e., the item that is tameh will not transmit tumah, and the item that is tahar will not receive tumah. Ashkechan balua ba'adadam. So I will say now, we've established these halachos as they apply to something swallowed by a person. Balua de behema minalan. I will say from where do these halachos apply to something swallowed by a behema? So the Gemara says, kavachomer. It's kavachomer. What's the kavachomer? Uma adam shemetame mechayim matzil bibalua. So we'll say a person can become tameh even when he is alive. Right? Yet, again, what's the halacha? If he swallows something, again, if it's a tummy item, it doesn't transmit tumah. If it's a tar item, it retains its tar status even if the person becomes tameh. Behema she'ena metameh mechayim eno din she'tatzil bebalua. Rabbi say behema which does not become tameh when it is alive. Rabbi remember again, a behema can only become tameh in death. A behema cannot go ahead and become tameh, even though I will say we call sometimes a non-kosher animal a behema tameya. That's what I will say really means not kosher. That does not mean in terms of tumah and tara. So an animal can only become tameh, ritually impure, ultimately upon death. So we'll say if a person who has a heightened level, he can become tameh during life and during death, yet is matzil bibalua. So a behema, which can only become tameh during death, certainly again, Eino din shetatzel bebalua. To which the Gemara says, but what about but the comparison is a bit flawed. Mala adam shekein tzarach shia bebeis hamenuga. We'll say, interestingly enough, and we'll define what this means in just a moment, but people are different. Why? Because a person, I will say, if he enters into a house with saras, does not become instantaneously tameh, unless, of course, he waits around a little bit. Now, we're going to define the scope of that in just a moment. To which the Rabbi say, now when we say tzarich shehiyah, that means in order for his clothing to become tamei, his clothing does not become tamei instantaneously. The clothing that he's wearing only becomes tamei if what? If he remains, if he tarries in the house with saras for a bit. We're going to define this in just a moment. Tamar bebehema sheino tzricha shehiyah bebayis. Rabbi say, behema on the other hand does not require any tarrying in order to become tamei. What does this mean? To which the Gemara says, I will say, what does this refer to? That a behema does not need tarrying in a home with saras in order to become tamei. What does this refer to? We'll say it can refer to a behema, the behema itself. Why? Because the behema does not become afflicted with tumas saras. So we're referring to lemay hilchasa lekelim sha'al gaba. I will say what it means is as follows: that if a behema walks into a home, right, that has saras, then what happens, Rabbi Osai? The kelim, the utensils, which are on that behema, become tamei. The kelim which are on that animal become tamei. So the Gemara says, but one second, if that's the case, sounds like what it's saying is, they become tamei immediately, even without waiting, with no shoe, with no tarrying. To which the Gemara says, Adam nami lo bai. Both say, but that parallel case by Adam would be the same. After all, what did we learn? Disnan. Hanichnas labayis hamenuga. Both say, if a person walks into a house afflicted with saras, the kelev al kseifav v'sandalav v'taba osav biyadav. And I will say, what happens? He's holding his utensils on his shoulder. He's holding his sandals, his shoes, and his rings in his hand. And I will say, what is he not doing? He's not wearing them. He's not wearing them. He's simply holding them. Hu vehein temein miyad. I will say, the person, and those items he is carrying become tamei immediately. Hayalavush kelev is sandala. Hayalavush kelev, if he was wearing his clothing, this sandalav beraglav, and his shoes were on his feet. V'taba osav be'etzbo, and his rings were on his fingers. So I'll say, what's talacha? Hu tamei miyad. His person, his body becomes tamei immediately. Vehein tahorin ad sheyishe b'chtei achilas pras. And Abosai, his clothing that he's wearing, ultimately what? Ultimately, again, remain tahar until he tarries there with the amount of time that it takes to eat achilas pras. Now, we'll define this before we define that. I will say, so what the Gemara is suggesting over here is you're trying to say that an animal has a certain advantage or a certain difference than people. What we're saying is it's not really true. If an animal walks into a house with saras and there's kelim on top of the animal, although the animal does not contract tumah, ultimately, again, the kelim on the animal do contract tumah. To which the Gemara says the same halacha applies by people, right? If you walk into a house and you're holding your shoes, you're holding your clothing, so your person, and those items you're carrying contract tumah immediately. It's only a din if you're wearing your clothing, that the clothing only contracts tumah when? If you tarry for a bit. How long is a bit? Bichdei achilas pras. The amount of time, I will say, literally takes to eat half a loaf. How long is that? First of all, what type of loaf? Paschitim v'lo pasorim, right? A loaf of wheat and not a loaf of barley. Meisav v'ocha b'lifton. And the amount of time it would take you to eat it while reclining and eating it with some type of relish. So Amar Rava says, Tarvayu taninhi. In reality, we have learned both of these halachos already. Tuma belua tanina, tuma tahara belua tanina. Both say we have already learned these halachos. Namely, again, that swallowed tumah does not convey tumah, and something that is tar that is swallowed does not contract tumah. Where did we learn this? So tuma belua. So I'll say, where did we learn? Where did we learn tuma belua? This is not bala tabas tamea. We'll say if a person swallowed a ring which was ritually impure. So we'll say a simple case. You have a ring, the ring came in contact with a corpse. The ring is now tamei. I swallow that ring. We'll say, what's talacha? Tovel, so let's say I'm a kohen, I go to the mikvah, tovel va'ochel b'trumaso. I can go to the mikvah and I can eat truma. We'll say, even though what? That ring is sitting inside of me. Yet hikia, I will say literally again, if it exits my body, this is if I throw it up, but it doesn't make a difference how it comes out. Once it comes out of my body, so tzmeya v'tamaso. The ring itself is still tamei, and I will say now I will become tamei again. Why will I become tamei again? Because when it exits my body, that's considered to be another contact with the ring, and I will become tamei. But I will say, but for our purposes, what do you see? While that ring is in my body, what's the halacha? The halacha ultimately is it does not convey tumah for me. That shows you that tumah belua, swallowed tumah, does not convey tumah. Tara belua, we'll finish with this. Tara belua tanina. We learned furthermore again that something that is tar and swallowed in the body does not contract tumah. Where do we learn this? Tisnan. Bala tabas Torah. Both say reverse case. I swallow a ring which is totally tar. And then what happens? I enter into a house where there's a corpse, and I'm under the same roof with the corpse. And so I become tamei. I undergo my purification process. Vihiza v'shana v'taval v'ikiyah harehi kimasha. Ultimately, again, I will say what happens. I become tamei, and again, I go through my whole purification process. Ultimately, again, and then the ring comes out of me after my purification process. I will say, what's the status of the ring? From here, that's what? Something that ultimately, again, is absorbed in the body, even if someone who is tamei, ultimately, again, retains its tar status. Right? So once we have these two halachos, we'll see why the need for the repetition. And we'll continue tomorrow. Shkoyach.